Okay, and now we are playing against Victor here. So, oh, I just played e4 and I just realized I was going to switch my move orders up and I didn't do it. I am a silly boy, but we didn't have to worry about that anyways because it's probably going to end up the same. So let's just play our normal type of system here. So I would like to try experimenting with playing knight f3 first. There was a good question raised for those watching on YouTube. These are also streamed games. But there's a good question raised. What if we play knight f3 first? Because after we play e4, e5, there's some complications that come from it. So knight f3 might give us more of a pure King's Indian attack. And now I would like to play c3. I'm considering stopping knight d4. c3 does not stop knight to e5. I don't think that's a concern, though. So, yeah, let's play c3. If we allow knight e5, so be it. And, if knight e5, maybe I'll go like h3. Or no, bishop e2. I guess both will have to be considered. There's an interesting line I just saw. So knight e5, if we play bishop e2 there, which, you know, sometimes we're going to be forced outside of a King's Indian attack. Luckily, we're not here, but what I was looking at is knight e5, bishop e2, knight d3 check, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, queen a4 check, bishop d7, and then queen to c4, offering a trade of queens. Even though like it feels wrong to do that, we can still get our King's Indian position just without our fianchettoed bishop. But here we don't have to worry about that. So we're just going to go straight back into it with g3. And next time, I will play knight f3 first. Sometimes, you know, like I'm an e4 player at heart. And sometimes when you play a specific move for so long, it's ingrained in your soul. You know, you just can't not play it. It just feels incorrect. It feels illegal. So. Now, if queen d3 here, I'll probably play queen e2. Generally, I really like these types of end games no matter what. Like, even if we get like an equal one or a slightly worse one, I think that's not really the end of the story. Ending up in like a slightly worse type of position. Of course, as white, that's not really the most impressive thing ever. We don't want to end up in slightly worse positions as white. But they're bound to happen here and there. It matters more about how much you know about the position, I think. And if you feel like you're very comfortable with the positions you get, then that's, I think, more important than the direct objective evaluation of like a slightly worse or slightly equal. Just because some slightly worse positions could be played with a lot more gusto than something that's directly equal. For example, King's Indian defense, the computer sometimes will give an evaluation of like plus 0.5, plus 1, but it feels sometimes easier to play because you have direct counterplay. You have like an active plan and something you can work out and do. Whereas an equal position that might be in a dry, boring like Semislav or maybe a Catalan, it feels like your options are more limited and you're really just trying to hold on for the 0-0-0 and there's kind of no chances for more. Yeah. So this pawn is hanging. And I really would like to take it. If I take it, what's the consequences? Knight takes g5. The knight has no good discoveries against my knight. So I think I can take it. For example, if knight takes g5, knight d5, I could always consider knight takes f7. That's not crazy because it's just a desperado. right? We take another pawn, and then we take on d5, and open things up where their king is weak. So I think knight takes g5 is the right call here. We just take the pawn. Last time, there was like a game or two ago where I could have taken a pawn, and I ended up not doing it. And I think that was the wrong call. As King's Indian players, we got to really try to, you know, play with gusto. I like that word. It's a funny word. So. Yeah, and there was a good comment. The evaluation is what the relevant comfort level is of the players. Yeah, like if you're more comfortable in a position, that can mean more sometimes. Like I've played many of these endgames before, and I feel comfortable, like I know the plans, and I think that gives me an advantage. So I'm gonna play knight f3, just retreat it. I was also thinking of this knight to f3, because then actually that knight to f3 does look really promising. I want to play this knight to f3 because then I'm threatening knight takes f7. That looks really interesting. So let's bring this knight to f3. We have to play, I'm not going to say with gusto again, but I want to play with activity in mind. So knight to f3 is a very active move. And knight takes f7 is the threat. If they play knight g8, then we have some thinking to do, because they're defending their bishop and we don't have the sacrifice anymore. We could play h3 or h4 just to kick this bishop, ask it where it's going to go, and either follow up with h4 after, where if f6 we can just retreat to h3 or something else. Yeah. So, what plans does my opponent have here? Giving up the g5 pawn, there's some serious problems with it. And they all tie to the fact that generally, if you sacrifice a g-pawn like this, you're really hoping that there's some counterplay on the g-file. Something like a rook to g8. But the problem is, with a fianchetto structure, this is one of the pros about it. We are very, very well defended against any of those problems. I think this is a free piece. Because after we take, if they take, we can take with the bishop. This is defended more than enough times. So the knight on f5 is actually able to be captured here, unfortunately for them. We're again threatening knight takes f7, winning material, with a discovered attack against the bishop. So here, we simply take on g5. Now, I'm really considering knight takes e5 here. This might seem crazy, but I think there's good reason for it. After knight takes e5, pawn takes g5, we can take the knight on c6. So even though we give up a piece, we take on c6. And the problem is their king is completely open, even though we give back the piece, but we're not quite giving back the piece, are we? After they take back the knight, we can take and win an exchange at the very least. I'm not sure if I'd take it, just because, again, when we fianchetto, we want to be careful about giving up material, or giving up our light square bishop like that. But how many pawns would we be up? So right now we're +4. So if we take here, we would be +5. Now +2. Now +5. Now +2. Now +3. So we'd be up 3 points of material. We could take the rook. But we could also throw in a different move instead of taking back on c6. We can actually play queen e4 check, and this wins the bishop. Yeah, that actually wins the bishop. So knight takes e5. Do we have to worry about knight takes e5? That's something else to calculate now. Because we have to look at everything, right? Maybe we worry about that. Maybe we worry about knight takes e5, knight takes e5. And I feel like I'm not quite happy with that, and that we could have gotten more out of the position. Maybe that's still good though. After rook to e1, they can't play like knight d3 or knight f3 or anything, and we are threatening to take on e5. So queen e4 check is in the position, and knight takes e5, knight takes e5. We do have rook e1, where if they take, we can take here, and we can also follow up with moves like queen e4. I feel like this is really tempting. It's too tempting not to go for. I really like moves like this because, well, you know, King's Indian attack players, we got to play the crazy ones. We got to play the crazy ones sometimes. So this is what I'm going to play. All right, now, again, I'm going to play rook e1. And my follow-up is either going to be rook takes e5 or f4. If they move their king, then I will just take on e5, because if they try taking back, then unfortunately their queen is hanging. So it's still +2 for us in this position, despite giving back some material. And now I think f4 should win. Because unfortunately, everything is kind of tied up here, right? Yeah, now rook takes e5. This is the big problem. Is now that they're losing their queen, because their queen and their king were aligned, and now things are kind of going down in flames. So maybe knight takes e5 wasn't the best option, but it was really, really, really interesting. It opened up the king and maintained a material edge for us, and I think for that we deserve some style points. But we're going to look at what the more objective way to play was. I'd assume, since the computers are definitely going to be more focused on material advantages or just maintaining huge advantages and not converting them like that, then they might not be super happy with the move. But I think this is an easier position to win. Here, I think this is an easier position to win than what was on the board before. So we'll have to see. All right, so we'll take. Should we play h3 and then g4? Or should we just rook e1 check? This feels fine. Rook e6 check now. If king g5, then we have h4. We also have queen d2. I like h4 check. Now how do we finish things off here? We could be boring. Let's play queen e4. This is the boring move. We're just trying to take on f4 here. And there's several mates being offered. If they take on g3, we just queen f4. There's also bishop f3. But I think I'll play queen f4 anyways. Yeah, queen f4. If king takes h4, then we have rook h6 mate. We're threatening this mate right now. Looks like this should work. Yeah. Queen h6 checkmate. So 2 mistakes and 0 blunders. I have to find out. I have to ask myself, was knight takes e5 the mistake? And again, we're not going to worry about the evaluation there, honestly. I feel fine. g3, of course. Not going to be happy, but okay, queen c2. g5, of course, was a mistake. Here, knight c4 was better. I thought knight f3 was promising. Doesn't really look like it. Hurts. Takes. f6. Is knight takes e5? Knight takes e5 isn't one of the top 3. The top 3 are like +8 to +10. What is this one at? This one's like a +6. Okay, it's going up. +7, +6.5, +7. Okay, we're going to give ourselves some credit. It's still a +7 position. So I think we can be proud of what we saw here. So just to point some stuff out, if they take on g5 here, then we can actually not even take on g4. I think that's the, personally, even though it's higher evaluated, I think knight takes c6 is the better try, or better way to get an advantage, because after takes, we simply pick up the bishop, and we are still bishop up, but their king is significantly weaker. And of course, here, one of the testing things to look at, f4 was actually playable. I thought rook e1 was totally fine, because if they castled, for example, then move to look at is rook takes e5. And the problem is they can't take because they lose their queen. So again, yeah, there's mention that, of course, since everything's like above +5 and it maintains that type of advantage, then yeah, things are looking good. Generally, I prefer things where it simplifies the position, where we still know it's winning, into something we're more comfortable winning. So I like to just avoid any I would like to say I like to avoid any complications. Of course, knight takes e5 is the exact opposite of avoiding complications, but it simplifies things directly, and I think that's something that's really nice to be able to do, and that's kind of the game. And of course, just one other thing is if they take, then of course we just take here, even though we gave back the piece. Well, this is just not going to end well, is it? Something like queen to e4 comes, we're just way too active. This is totally winning, and I think anyone can see that. So good game.